Denver, great to have you.
Morning. How you doing, buddy?
Never better. Both of us. Well, I'm out of the snow. Did you get any snow at all where you are this weekend?
Yeah, I think we got about 5 or 6 inches here in the valley. So, but they say the offices are closed down, but I'm still heading up this morning to do some work. There's a lot to do, so, I'm heading out here in about 90 minutes, headed to D.C.
All right. So, what do you do? Go up 81?
Actually, I think we're going to go up 29 today. Go up 29. You're going to laugh because I got to pick up cleaning, get my at Crozet at B&B Cleaners in Crozet. So get my suits and head on up north.
All right. Well, thanks for that little tidbit of information. You kind of remind me of Rob Whitman, who goes home every night to the Fredericksburg area, drives home every night, and he says, it keeps me humble because I get home, and as soon as I get in the door, my wife says, hey, take out the trash before you come in. So it keeps you humble, no doubt. Listen, Denver.
Yes, it does.
Let's get to the shutdown. Now it's record-setting days, I guess, 23 days. Now it's a hardship, right? Because a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck. Doesn't matter that they're going to get back pay, and it's like a vacation. If you need that paycheck to put food on the table or pay stuff, it's a hardship to people. The president, though, is saying he's not caving on this. But then your Democratic colleagues saying we're not giving him a penny for the wall, even if he reopens the government. So how do you resolve this impasse, Denver, Riggleman?
Well, you have to stay in. The 5th District paid me to make hard decisions. They paid me to take tough votes. And this is it. I think what it is, though, John, is I've argued this first, probably because I'm fairly good at math, but you're talking about 0.001 of the entire budget is what the Democrats are fighting over, and, money that's 8 times less than what they voted for in 2006. So I think this is all about, it is politics. It's not this ridiculous call that, a wall, physical barriers, immoral, unethical. And, when you look at everything that's in this bill, you're sort of scratching your head because they're doing this for political reasons only. I don't know if you know this. You're talking about an increase of $571 million for 2,000 additional law enforcement staff and support personnel, $798 million for 52,000 more detention beds to better house those attempting to cross the border illegally. And you're talking about $563 million for 75 additional judges, so that we can expedite immigration cases, get people in the country quicker. All of this is on the table in that bill, John. So for Republicans like myself who are sort of common sense, and we're also, new, we have 32 new members in Congress that are Republicans, we're scratching our head at the Democrats right now because it seems to me that the president has met them halfway. You have some very good Republicans and moderate Democrats that are also scratching their heads saying what's going on here. This is not a Trump shutdown. This is a Pelosi-Schumer shutdown, and everybody knows it.
So what would be your recommendation right now? What are you going to tell your constituents that are not getting paid, and what's your recommendation to President Trump?
Well, I think right now, I wish I, had all those answers because, again, it's a tough vote. But here's my recommendation. My recommendation is that we come to an agreement on money for the border regardless of how you want to define it. I was talking to some people behind closed doors. I can't give you names. It's funny when somebody says, say from the other side of the aisle that they'll vote for it if it said physical barrier instead of build the wall. Think about that, John, for a second. This is about semantics. It's about politics. All they have to do. And I tell you what, if the Democrats came and said, hey, we'll vote for this, but we'd like a portion of that money to go towards, persistent surveillance or, enhanced immigration procedures, as far as making sure that, we have better data sharing among the agencies so that, we can look at amnesty cases quicker. All that stuff is out, on the table. And I think this is why it's sort of a head scratcher on what's going on there. And you've had some people floated a 3-week CR, just 3 weeks to do negotiations. I think that's something that might happen. But on the other hand, I think there's a lot of Republicans who don't think the Democrats are actually negotiating in good faith. And it also is a little bit, again, a head-scratcher when you have 0.001 of the budget that they're arguing over and something they voted for in the past. This is completely political.
Well, it is. The hypocrisy is beyond the pale. And by the way, just so you know, I know you were in the snow in D.C. and the president stayed there to negotiate with his team, but 30 Democrats went on a chartered 727 flight for a weekend frolicking with 109 lobbyists in Puerto Rico at the beach. So obviously they can't be that concerned about the federal workers if they're on a beach in the weekend while everybody else is stuck here working. Denver Riggleman trying to resolve it.
Yeah, I saw that, and you sort of scratch your head a little bit at that. Now, these are supposed to be, from what I've heard from the Democrats, John, right? These are for the people. We're here for the people. No, they're not. This is a political, it's a political gambit, is what they did at the beginning to try to gain an advantage based on appeals to emotion and just lack of any type of common sense, and really a lack of any knowledge on physical security or the border or how defense in depth works. I know how it works. I have combined 26 years of military experience. I know this. I know how to do this. This is not irrational. This is not something that's ridiculous. This is something that's actually very modest. You're talking about only 234 miles of the border, John, and now, we have this modest proposal, and you have Democrats in Puerto Rico who are screaming about, the emotional distress of Americans, but they're in Puerto Rico watching Hamilton. I mean, this is what you get with the Democratic Party, and that's why right now I think you have some very frustrated people who, again, are trying to get things done.
It is incomprehensible to me that as a Democrat...
I mean, I saw this, and, the press is a crazy thing, right? And then, of course, what was the story the next day? Oh, they're down there looking at storm damage.
Yeah.
They had to do actual damage control, right, to say, oh, this is the real reason we're in Puerto Rico. We're not here to party and see Hamilton. And so I think that's part of it, too, is that you just have some disingenuous things. And I think those type of activities will hurt the Democrats in the long run. The Republicans have to make sure that we stay on course, and try not to do stupid things, because Republicans sometimes do stupid things, too. How about we not be stupid, stay the course, present our argument in a cogent way, and let the American people decide who the problem lies with. And right now, I would say this week is going to tell the tale.
We're with Denver Riggleman. He is a newly elected new congressman from the 5th District of Virginia, a Republican. Denver, let's get to the New York Times bombshell, I guess you could call it, coming out on Friday. The president of Fox News said he was insulted by even talking about it. But the New York Times saying that the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the United States opened up an investigation on the president after he fired Comey, with the assertion that they thought he was a paid agent of the Russian government, like an agent of the Russians, because he fired Comey and because he had a meeting with their ambassador the day after. I had to read it 2 times to be sure I was not misinterpreting what they were saying. Do you think there's any merit at all to this, Denver?
No, the more, it almost seems like they're dropping panic bombs everywhere, doesn't it, John? It's. I like to see. How about we wait for the report from Mueller? Now, here's the thing: if this report is, as I heard this morning, anticlimactic or doesn't claim collusion, my guess is anybody going to call out the press for some of these writers in the press? Are they going to call them out for actually not sourcing? Or just straight out falsehoods in reporting?
No.
And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, what happens once this report doesn't prove collusion. Now, do all these articles that we've heard about, do they backtrack them and do apologies over the last 2 years for every article that was false? Probably not. So I think what's happening, I don't know if a lot of people are reading the New York Times. I think that might be spread over CNN, maybe over MSNBC, some of those outlets. But the people in the 5th District, they're pretty smart. I think they're going to wait for the report, see what that says. And as far as these type of ridiculous articles that are coming out, that you sort of, it's like, that's enough. Come on, why don't you do some real reporting? I'm glad you guys are opinion writers, or you're in fantasy or fiction. That's great. But I think at some point, once that report drops, I would like to see if all of these articles are retracted or there's apologies given for them.
Denver, you said that you had heard from reliable sources that Mueller was perhaps wrapping his investigation up and there would be a report out soon, and you suspected that in it there really wouldn't be any Russian collusion or that would be anticlimactic. Can you confirm that you heard that from what you would say would be reliable sources without...
No, I'm not. No, I mean, this is something that, has been bandied about, and also, some things running. But, I don't think if they're reliable or not, who knows? I don't want to be like the press.
Right.
and say that somehow, I know what's going to happen or this is going to be anticlimactic or something like that. My guess is this, though, if it is anticlimactic, I'd like to see, if there's any retractions in the press. But I wouldn't put that out as, something that I've confirmed or have reliable sources on specifically.
I doubt there's going to be any retractions. But
yeah,
I think...
I doubt it, too. I think, there's... Of the new freshman class, there's about 32 of us. I think 8 of us are prior military. You have people that are prior litigators. We have an amazing freshman class of Republicans. Mm-hmm. And I think all of them are sort of my thought pattern. I don't know if you've watched us. We're sort of practical guys and gals, and we're just waiting to see what happens on this report. Our guess is the report will be anticlimactic. There will not be collusion there. And at that point, I'd like to see how the press deals with it. Now, if the report has some awful things in it, obviously we're going to look at it, but we are also looking at it through a lens. And I'll tell you this, that, is all this true? Is there any bias in the report? It's going to take a lot of reading and a lot of study, but I just don't know, John. I just can't imagine there's collusion in that report.
Well, so far there's not a shred of evidence for the way the FBI leaks things. There's no doubt to me that if any of these investigators had any hint of that, this would have been leaked Denver a long time ago. Now, you're former intel, high level, so the Washington Post follows up with an article on Saturday, and what they're saying is, well, the president went at great lengths to not reveal his private conversation with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, in Helsinki when he met with him on the side. Yet other people are saying that is not uncommon for a president not want to reveal their notes from the interpreter because the press then gets a hold of it, misinterprets it, and does fake news. What say you?
I would say I don't know if there's any mandate to take notes on a private conversation between a president and any prime minister or other president or anybody in any other country. I'm a little surprised by that. There are privileged communications between executives, especially, at our level when we have a president and he's meeting with other, foreign leaders. So I guess, again, when you read this as somebody who's been in the military, who have been in intelligence, for me it's a shrug of the shoulders. He didn't take notes on his first meeting with Vladimir Putin, or didn't have a note taker, or wanted to say, hey, how you doing? How's your family? What was really the discussion there? And that is somehow breaking news. I mean, I think that's the thing that the press needs to get their, I probably shouldn't, head out of the fourth point of contact, but they need to definitely remove something from somewhere because right now they're just sort of spinning in circles, and I think we've had enough of that type of reporting. When
you looked at the Friday report in the New York Times, then followed up by the Post the next day, it almost seemed to me, though these are independent companies that they don't have common ownership or editorial commonality, it was almost like it was a coordinated effort. Like, let's do the fake story about the FBI, and let's follow it up with a fake story about he wouldn't let the interpreter's handwritten notes get released. I mean, the whole thing stinks to me. I really think Mueller needs to wrap this up. Let's get the report. Let's put it out there and let the chips fall where they may. I really think people are tired of it. Denver Riggleman, let's get to the president's potentially declaring a national emergency and finding other ways to fund his wall through money that's been seized from drug dealers and things like that, other pots of money that the DHS has. You're not a lawyer, but you've talked to enough people now over a couple of weeks. Do you think the president has a legal authority to do that?
Well, I mean, we've been briefed, that he possibly could have the legal authority. I will tell you that a lot of the Republican delegation, including myself, let's just see if Congress can get this done first. And I think you saw President Trump backtrack off that a little bit. I think he'd like to see Congress get it done first. I think this week you're going to see movement. If you don't, I think he will at some point. But, I'm not in the president's head. I honestly am not. And from him saying, hey, he's not going to consider it this time, but he could in the future. I think he does want to see Congress do it. I'm a separation of powers individual. I think Congress's job is to fund this. I think Congress's job is to hold the purse strings. So I would, I think a lot of us would implore the president, please, let us see if Congress can get through this first. There's definitely some things working behind the scenes between the Republicans and Democrats in the negotiating side. There is some small movement, I believe. I can't get into it too specifically at this point, but I think there is some movement this week, and I think we're going to see some action this week. And if we don't, I think next week or this weekend is going to be, I think it's going to be an interesting weekend if we don't see movement before Friday.
Congressman Riggleman, one of your counterparts, new freshman Democratic Senator California Katie Hill, was really the first Democrat publicly to break with Pelosi, and she said, yes, I would vote for money for a barrier. I think that's the right thing to do, and we can go forward and move and open the government. That was the first really elected Democrat in the House to say that. Do you see a couple others might come forward this week based on your inside knowledge, sir?
Yes. And I think what they're saying, too, is that, when you have, 52,000 more detention beds and you're talking about more immigration lawyers, when you're talking about we need to have a 21st century solution to this immigration problem, but that always starts with securing the border first. I've always talked about a three-phase approach. First, you secure the border. Then you talk about visa reform. Then you talk about E-Verify. And if we can actually make sure that our technologies match what E-Verify needs to do. This is not rocket science. And I think once you do this, I think a lot of this is political at the base level. And I think the biggest fear from the Democrats isn't that, that there's going to be 234 miles of border wall and 17 or 1,800 miles. I think the biggest fear of Democrats is optics for them with a base that's become increasingly emotional and polarized, and that does not understand physical or national security. I think that's the issue that you have. You have Democrats in there with military backgrounds who know that physical barriers work, they know that defense in depth works, and they also know that this is a small step, and they're also looking at not the concessions, but the actual issues that the president brought to the table and making sure that we streamline immigration. I'm not quite sure where the Democrats have a problem with this plan.
Final question. The Israeli government went absolutely crazy over the president talking about withdrawing his troops from Syria, saying that was going to open up a pathway to Iran for additional expansionist influence. And the president basically has been an ally of Israel, obviously moved the embassy there. The embassy to Jerusalem. But now Netanyahu's gone ballistic over that. But John Bolton seemed to slow things down. How do you balance this, your relationship with Israel and the president's desire to get out of Syria? What's the balance here, Denver?
The balance is this, is that if, I've always said, if we do get out of Syria, we need to do this in a practiced, right, and planned way based on what our mission parameters were. There has been mission creep in Syria. However, we also are making incredible progress. So we have this, this huge thing. And plus, you have one other area there. This isn't just about ISIS. Actually, this is more about Iran than ISIS. And with the Israelis is this, and I know a lot over there now, as you know, is like, listen, if you guys have a way of getting out of Syria that's slow and methodical and allows us to defend ourselves, it's something that we can probably handle. I believe that we have to, these two things about Israel, they have a right to exist, but they have a right to defend themselves any means necessary based on the threats on their border. So with us removing ourselves from Syria eventually, if you do see Israel increase in their ops tempo for military-specific operations, I don't think that's going to be a surprise. Also, there's other ways to support Israel, but there's also other ways to support our allies in that region. I think that's what you're going to see is some kind of deal made where we're supporting them in other means rather than troops on the ground. We'll see what happens, but I have still not seen the definitive mission parameters that we've met or finalized in Syria. And like I told you before, I think we need to get our troops out of anywhere where we're not making any type of headway, or where we don't need to be policemen around the world, but there are certain areas where you have powers like Iran, where you have people like ISIS or any affiliated groups that are trying to actually entrench themselves, where we have to. America is really the only power to stop them from doing that. So it is a balance. I wish I had a 100% answer for you there, but again, we have not seen the specifics of what Bolton said, and I don't know the specifics of what Israel wants to do or what they've talked to Bolton by behind closed doors, because it just happened. So it's not that I don't want to answer. I just think that if we do leave Syria, we have to do it in a practiced and planned way, and we have to remember that Israel has a right to defend itself at all costs, and that's something we would have to support.
Denver Riggleman, for somebody that didn't want to give an answer, that's a pretty thorough, in-depth answer.
Well,
I'll accept
sorry,
that.
it's an intel thing, right? So, and trying to actually, parse through and knowing that as a one of 435, you're not going to have all the answers all the time, but you can do the best you can for your district, and that is my job, is to do the best that I can for my district and try to find the truth. I haven't been in politics before, so that allows me to actually, do things where I'm not having to worry about, saying something specifically to some kind of, voter block or something like that. I can find the truth for the 5th. I can vote for it, and if they like it, they'll let me know. If they don't like it, they'll let me know, but I'll be transparent about it.
Denver, I got to roll. What's your website?
So, again, denverforcongress.com. Go ahead and check that out. And, of course, now we have the at Rep Riggleman. Rep, R-E-P, Riggleman is our Twitter handle. Please go there and follow us. I put out a lot of nifty things on Twitter, so please do that.